But I do thank you all, and I thank you for your involvement in Catholic charities. You know, when we listen today in the news media to the great image of the Catholic Church, that, thank God, Pope Francis has really got us from one story to another story. Now he's the person of the year, and the Catholic Church is back again doing good things and not spending our lives listening and reading about bad news. And so it is important to listen to the man and to listen to what his vision is and what his concerns for the Catholic Church really are. And as I have said to you on many occasions, you know, the important thing about Catholicism is that we actually have to live it. It's not a faith and it's not a religion of knowing things. It's a religion of action. And one of the greatest ways we have of putting that into practice is through Catholic charities. Catholic charities takes care of the least of our brothers and sisters in this world. Each one of you have your own vocation in life. You have your own work. You do what you do each and every day. But in doing that, we can never forget about those who are much less fortunate than we are. We think that, you know, poverty exists, and poverty and the third world is not only in some far distant land. Let me assure you, I travel around every corner of this diocese, and you can go and see some of the poorest places that I have experienced, and I've been to all the slums in Latin America. I've been to all of these places. Here, right here in the city of Dallas, we have poor people also. We have children who don't have the possibility of a future because they never go to school, or they cannot go to school, or they can't even, you know, finish grade school or high school. We do our best, and I thank each and every one of you, because without you, we could never do, and Catholic Charities could never do the things it is capable of doing. And today, I very much would like, and I am so grateful to the mayor of City, Mike Rawlings, who has done such wonderful things. I can say this as he's not here yet, who has done such wonderful things, and this is not a paid political announcement, but he has certainly done an awful lot of good in what I would call the Catholic sense of doing good in our world today. I don't make any judgment on the economics or on, you know, the political aspects, but certainly from a humanitarian point of view and from caring for the least of our brothers and sisters, he has done a wonderful job. A couple of months ago, he asked me if I would help to promote something that he has very dear to his heart, and that is resolving what today has become an epidemic in the United States of America, and that is violence against women and children. Domestic violence in our country, it's unseen. Most of us never experience it, but let me tell you, it exists and growing tremendously, even in the city of Dallas. Most of us probably have no experience of this, but let me tell you, if you go to other parts of this city, you will experience it. You will experience it here within blocks of St. Rita's Church, of Christ the King Church, everywhere. Domestic violence exists, and it exists in our families, and maybe we don't even know anything about it. I would hope that in the coming years, Catholic Charities would take a lead role in helping these women and children and resolving this great social problem that exists and continues to grow in our nation. Just think that in Dallas alone, I believe last year, there were 60 deaths. 64 women died due to domestic violence. And this continues every year. The number of cases are in the thousands that the police department has to take care of. And where do these people go? Into hiding? Many times their families are not in the area or abandon them or they've no contact with their families. And yet we have to be, as a charitable organization, we have to be involved in this. It is as urgent as feeding the poor, of giving a place for the homeless. We too need very much to be involved in this ministry of caring for these women and children who are abandoned. I would hope that Catholic Charities in the next couple of years, and I certainly will be a promoter of it, will become involved in having caseworkers in every part of our diocese, and also in having facilities where we can care temporarily for women and children who suffer from this terrible illness, this terrible sickness that has invaded our culture and our society. So I do hope that Catholic Charities will be able, I know I'm always telling Arnie Nelson, you know, he's got to do this and he's got to do that. We have unlimited needs. And the more that we do, the more needs that we have. But that's the nature of charity. But isn't it interesting that it has been only Pope Francis, a Catholic Pope, who's now the Person of the Year, who has called the world by his way of being and his example. Because let me tell you, other people, other popes have spoken about this issue of poverty. Other popes and other great leaders have spoken about, social ills all across the world. But it was only the example, and is only the example, of Francis, who gets out there himself and takes care of as many people as he possibly can. He is showing us the way, and that's why I invite all of you. I know that you have many things to do, but help in whatever way you can to support this mission of saving so many people in our society and our communities. It is important that we do this. Amid the many other activities that Catholic Charities takes care of, we have, you name it, we have it. We have all kinds of, social ills that land on our doorstep each day. But that is what we are about. That is what the Catholic Church is. That's what we are. We are people of action, and we cannot be just looking at these problems and saying we can do nothing about them. Yes, we can. When we come together, you think of the power and the greatness of the city of Dallas. You mean to tell me that we can't all come together to resolve these issues? And I only speak in the world of, faith communities. I think we work with the Jewish community, we work with the Methodist community, we work with the Lutheran community, we work with the Baptist community, we work with all people of faith. And that's what needs to happen in our city of Dallas. For too long, we have been divided and separated. God should never be an instrument of division and separation. He should be an instrument of unity and collaboration, of bringing us all together to do these works. So I do sincerely thank you all for what you do. I do thank you for helping us to promote Catholic Charities in our diocese. They have done wonderful work, and they continue to do wonderful work each and every day. So thank you all, and I hope that this year will be extremely successful for Catholic Charities, and it will be thanks to each and every one of you. The question of domestic violence is a very serious one. And I do want to publicly thank the Mayor for taking the leadership role in our community, in our city, indeed across the nation in many ways, for his stand on domestic violence and making every effort possible to bring this to the attention of each and every one of us and to the attention of our community in general. Mayor Rawlings needs no introduction in this town, and much less in this community. So we welcome you here this morning, Mr. Mayor, and we know you have an extremely busy schedule, and everybody is pulling at you and demanding your time. So without further conversation, we welcome you here. Thank you.
Great to see you, man. Appreciate it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. This is your home crowd. Yeah, it is. It's the home team. Thank you, Bishop. Didn't the Bishop do a wonderful job at the JFK commemoration? I thought your invocation was just marvelous, and you lended an air of gravitas and piety to the event that will never be forgotten. So thank you so much for that. I'm sorry I'm late. I was at the Omni, and you know, I'm still a believer that I can get any place in 15 minutes in this town, which I can't. There's this organization called Snowball Express. I don't know if some of you know it. It helps families of fallen veterans, and this is the weekend for us entertaining them, and they decided to go up the tollway and block, and then the police gave them an escort, so the mayor was second fiddle on that, and so it took me a while to get here, so I appreciate you moving things around. Thank you, Catholic Charities. Thank you, Archangels, for what you do and mean to this community. Dallas is, I said this week, and I wrote it, and I then took a look at it again to make sure I felt that way. But I said, I think there's never been a better time to live in the city of Dallas than right now in its history. I measure that by how we're doing for all of our citizens and their status. And I do believe we're making progress, and one of the reasons is because of the nonprofits, the faith-based community, and holding up the least of us. I will tell you, there's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of we're called to mission fields, if you will, and there's a lot out there to deal with. The bishop mentioned that I have been focused on in this last year a tragic, real disease in our community, and that is, there's this fancy word for it called domestic violence, but the real word is men beating women. You know, we are worried about terrorists across the seas, and there are thousands of terrorists in our homes every day. I can't imagine it. When I talk, women come up to me and start talking about their lives and how their lives were ruined because they lived with somebody. And what do we do as men? You do what I've always done. You go, well, move out. Come on, move out. Get away from a bad person like that. It makes all the sense in the world. But what I realize we don't do is we don't turn the mirror on us and say, how are we contributing to this scourge in our city? And so I did that. That was the exercise I went through. And I said, first of all, I need to talk more about this. I found out about it because my mother was dying of cancer, and she was being treated at UT Southwestern. They treated her very well, but she had just passed away. The Newtown shootings had just happened. We were all raw with emotions. And I read an article in a paper of a man who had been estranged from his wife, and his wife worked as an executive assistant at UT Southwestern, parked in the same garage that I had been in, tracked her down, shot her twice, in the back, turned her over, shot her in one eye, and then shot her in another eye. And I go, how does that happen? How does that happen? And so I started asking questions about domestic violence and realized that we had like 15, 16 murders like that that year. I looked at it, and there were 13,000 cases of domestic violence at our police department called in every year. 13,000. By the way, it's the worst thing for a policeman to deal with. Can you imagine knocking on the door? There's stuff going on there. You walk in. You weren't hired to be a marriage counselor. You don't know exactly what's happened. And by the way, it can turn on you at any moment. And so it's a tough, tough thing to deal with. It's a tough thing for all of us to deal with, and that's why I think we've all kind of kept our head down and just hoped it didn't kind of show up with our daughter or our sister. Because, by the way, it can. It's across the board demographically. It's across the board geographically in our city. And there's stories all the time about an executive who gets accused of it or turns around and because of whatever mental state he's in, kills his wife, sometimes children. And so I said what we might do, we might consider, is being more accountable ourselves. And that's what you're doing this morning by sitting here listening to me, is saying, how can we be more accountable on this? Well, I think it starts with our male culture. I'm proud to be a man. I am proud to be a man. I'm not one of those that ever thought about being a woman, I guess. That's good. As Seinfeld says, not that there's anything wrong with that, but no, I just am proud to be a man, okay? But what is a man? Well, I think you can call a guy a lot of things who hits a woman, but you can't call him a man. We need to redefine our definition of masculinity. Now, this didn't start at the turn of the 21st century here. This has been going on for centuries ad infinitum. Somehow we men have always felt that we can control women. And if we can control women, then there's permission when I drink a little much or get a little mad or might get fired, and she really upsets me, to not only verbally abuse her, but lose my temper and hit her. Well, the problem is, losing your temper and hitting her turns into starting to choke her when you really get upset. And then if it's not stopped, then it turns in ultimately to just losing, in all desperation, your senses and shooting her, killing her, stabbing her. And we saw that recently in the deaths in southern Dallas and Lancaster with a man. And it starts with this thought that we don't want to throw like girls when we're boys, right? Nobody wants to be throwing like a girl. I throw like a boy. And we foster that as opposed to honoring and lifting up our sisters and our mothers and our daughters. There's a whole different mindset here. And I know I'm preaching to the choir a little bit, but I need to walk through. It's sort of like racial jokes, okay? We all kind of are part of that from time to time and have been, but and now it's kind of getting over. Remember, we're talking about culture change. Remember Foster Brooks? Remember, we all remember Foster Brooks. He was the funny drunk, okay? And he had a whole shtick on being drunk. And now it's not quite so funny anymore. No one's doing that because we realize that people that are like that end up driving and kill people and destroy families. And that's what we're trying to focus here. So as opposed to sitting and talking to women about how they need to move out, I think it's more interesting for us as men to take the lead and start to change the culture about how we think about our masculine and female relationships and define ourselves as a man that way. So there are three things that I've attempted to do. One is raise money for shelters. So there are places to go for women that do choose to leave. And most of these do not have much money, and they need immediate shelter, and we don't have enough of them. Genesis Shelter is a fabulous organization. Jan Landbein is first class. The Family Place, Paige Flink, is over the top. We've got two great, and there are several smaller organizations. You find one, adopt them. They need men as partners in this. There are programs for men to support men and to do that. So that's one thing. I'm trying to raise money for that. And if there's a philanthropist out there that has got it in their hearts to help us build more shelters, that's what we need. The second thing is to look at law enforcement and our judicial system and hopefully modify it. We've done that already with the police department. I'm proud that the Dallas Police Department have something called a lethality assessment that had never been out there. And it is a questionnaire that when they go into that awkward situation, they walk through and they can determine whether this situation could turn lethal in the future. And I won't go through all the questions, but it's a nice way to determine that. Now we can start to really categorize the severity of these situations. Second is we need to pass on that to the DA's office and to our court system, because right now there are so many silos that they start anew every time. Police get them, put them in jail, they get bailed out. Then the DA's office looks at the situation and it all looks the same to them, and they start to sort it out. Then it kind of goes to the court system and it all looks the same to them, as opposed to saying, no, this has got a history to it. There's a situation here that these we need to pay attention to, because that's our first job, is to make sure people don't get killed, because then it's all over. It destroys lives in major ways. We're working together like we've never worked together before. I'm so excited our judges are that way. The DA's office has decided to do it. And we're trying to talk to the Commissioner's Court to make sure there's enough prosecutors on this. They've only got 2 right now, and the backups are significant. So as you get into the political season and you want to start advocating for something, is there enough money for domestic violence cases so we can move those cases through the system. And third, taking our message to young men. We've got a pledge, menagainst-abuse.org, and it's got a pledge where we ask men never to hit a woman, to speak out against domestic violence. And what does that mean? That means those awkward situations that we've all been in, and every one of us knows somebody that has done this, to speak up and say, that's not acceptable. I'm not going to play golf with you. I'm sorry, I just don't play golf with abusers. Okay? And so we start to create our own stigma. Third, to make sure that we teach our boys and our young women how to deal with each other on this issue, and kind of pass that on and start to take that pledge. We started this fall. We went to a lot of football games all across the city. We did it at Jesuit. Thank you, Mr. Ursing, and asked these men to take this pledge, because if they take the pledge and they think about it, They think about it. Nobody's ever talked about this. So as fathers, grandfathers, just a moment, you're sitting there, you know, in the Sonic line, this is a good moment just to say something bizarre. Like, you don't hit women, do you? That's not the way we're going to do it. And we're doing that. I want to kind of do that in basketball season. I want coaches to be talking about this. We want to go to the toughest, most masculine, most physical, and say, we're not going to treat women this way. And so that's how we're starting to change the culture. I need your help. Thank you for being interested in this. And as we start to talk about this, wouldn't it be great, as Dallas is the city that really leads the way on this issue, because it's a national issue, it's an international issue, a major international issue. I've been at the United Nations talking about this, and they're amazed that Dallas, Texas had a rally where there were 5,000 men that stood up and said, we are not going to treat our women this way. It made us progressive, it made us family, it made us look what a 21st century is all about. So God bless everything you do. Thank you, the Catholic Foundation, for helping so many in need. Thank you for your leadership, Bishop. And it's great to call this home. Thank you. Yeah.